Привет, друзья, and welcome to Russian Readers. And in today's video, we're going to start talking about the genitive case. And let me remind you guys that to truly know a case, you need to know its meaning or meanings and its form, right? And this is what we always focus on in our videos. And I have bad news and good news for you about the genitive case. And let's start with the bad news. And the bad news is that the genitive case in Russian, in my humble opinion, is the most difficult case, but at the same time, it's the most common case. So you'll see it all the time. It's very, very common. So yeah, that's the bad news. And now to the good news. Some of you may remember that I told you that unlike Russian, English does not really have grammar cases. And for the most part, it is true. But technically, English does have one case that you can apply to nouns, and that case is called the possessive case. And as it follows from the name, possessive case expresses possession. In other words, if someone has something and you want to express that, you want to, say that it's his or hers or theirs, right? You can actually apply that possessive case to a noun, and in English it is expressed through the apostrophe S ending. For example, if you have a friend and your friend has a car, you would say, this is my friend's car, right? So you technically change the ending of the noun friend by applying that apostrophe S to it, right? And that makes it a possessive case. So the good news is that by and large, fundamentally, this is what the genitive case is in Russian. And like I said, genitive case has a lot of uses, a lot of meanings. Not all of them are very easy to explain. But again, in this video, we're only going to talk about the most fundamental, the most general meaning of the genitive case in Russian, and that meaning is possession. But here's the tricky part. In Russian, we don't really have apostrophes, right? So you can't really literally add an apostrophe S or any other ending in Russian. So the only way to express the genitive case in Russian is to literally say, instead of saying my friend's car, you would have to say car of my friend. Or for example, instead of saying this is my sister's house, you would literally have to say this is the house of my sister, which you could technically do in English as well. It's not incorrect, it's just a little less common. But here's the beauty of the genitive case in Russian. By applying the genitive case to a noun, you don't even have to use a preposition. So again, in English, to apply the possessive case or the genitive case, if you will, you have two options, right? You can either apply that apostrophe S, for example, friend's car, right? Or you can use the preposition of, and say car of the friend, right? In Russian, you would do neither of those. In Russian, you would simply put the noun friend in the genitive case. So you would simply apply the genitive ending to the noun friend. So you would still kind of say car of friend, except of friend in Russian is one word, which is friend in the genitive case. I know this is a little confusing, so let me actually show you some examples, and this actually takes us to the form of the genitive case in Russian. So here's the form, again, only for singular nouns. So masculine and neuter nouns take the ending a or ya in the genitive case. As one of my students put it, by putting masculine and neuter nouns in the genitive case, you kind of make them feminine, which is of course not really true. Nouns can't change their genders, but if it's easier for you to think that way, you definitely can. So let's look at some examples. Drug in the genitive case would become druga, which literally means of a friend or of the friend, or you could translate it as friends, apostrophe S, right? Brat in the genitive case would become brata, and again it would mean literally of the brother or brothers something, right? Some inanimate examples, for example, dom would become doma, which literally means of the house. Some neuter examples, again neuter and masculine take the same endings in genitive case. So for instance, молоко, milk, would become молока, which means of milk or of the milk. Or яблоко, apple, would become яблока. And when would you put a ya? Again, it's a purely phonetic change, right? A and ya, they're pretty much considered the same ending. But for instance, if your noun ends in a soft sign or a soft consonant, all right, you would want to keep that soft by applying the ya ending, because, you know, ya is a softening vowel, unlike a. For example, if you have the word hotel, hotel, right? In the genitive, it would become atelia, because you want to keep that L soft. And atelia would literally mean of the hotel. Or words ending in y, right? In that case, you would also apply ya. For example, chai, tea, in the genitive case would become chaya, of the tea. So what happens to feminine nouns in the genitive? Well, feminine noun ending in the genitive case is y or e. And I know that to you it may look like you're pretty much putting your feminine nouns in the plural when you apply the genitive case ending. And a lot of times, yeah, it will be the same, the exact same form. It will sound the same, it will look the same. But you have to remember that, you know, if you're applying the genitive case ending to feminine nouns, you're not putting them in the plural, right? You're putting them in the genitive case. But again, if it makes it easier for you to think of it that way, to think of the plural ending as the genitive feminine ending, singular, then again, be my guest, think of it that way. So let's look at some examples. Сестра, sister, in the genitive case would become сестры, of the sister, or sisters something. Mama, mom, would become мамы, so of mom, of one's mom, or mom's something, right? Some inanimate examples: машина, car, in the genitive would be машины, which would mean of the car. And when would you apply the e? Again, it's a purely phonetic ending. If you have a soft consonant on the end of your noun, or a soft sign, right, you would apply the e, because again, e is a softening vowel, unlike y, which is not a softening vowel. For example, the word тетя, right? Тетя ends in the ya, which makes the t, the second t, soft. So you want to keep it soft in the genitive or in the plural, right? That's why you apply the e. So тети, which would mean of one's aunt, or aunt's something, right? Or another example is кровать, a bed, right? Кровать. So in the genitive case, it would be кровати, which would mean of the bed. And just like for plural endings, you would also apply e after those 7 consonants, right? K, G, H, J, Sh, Ch, Sh. Remember, I taught you that rule in our video on the nominative case about the plural endings, right? So that same rule applies to genitive feminine endings, because essentially it's the same ending as the plural ending. For example, the noun книга in the genitive case would become книги, right? Because G is one of those 7 consonants. So книги would mean of the book. And as you can imagine, the genitive case is very common with proper names, right? Because it expresses possession or belonging. So if you're using a name, a person's name, in Russian, you would actually also put it in the genitive case. So you would apply that same ending. So let's look at some common masculine names. For example, Michael, right? In the genitive case would be Maikla, right? Because obviously it's masculine. So you apply a, right? Maikla would mean of Michael or Michael's something, right? Another common American name is John, right? And again, in the genitive case, it would become Джона, which again would mean of John or John's. Now let's look at a couple of common Russian names. Alexander, well, that's kind of an international name, but anyway, it's a very common name in Russian. So Alexander in the genitive case would become Alexandra. right? Of Alexander or Alexanders. And another example is Sergei, right? In the genitive case would become Sergeya, which would mean of Sergei or Sergei's something. And let's look at some common female names. For example, Anna would become Anni in the genitive, right? Of Anna or Anna's. Maria would become Marii, of Maria or Maria's. Natasha would become Natashi, of Natasha or Natasha's. And for instance, Alisa would become Alisi, of Alisa or Alisa's. Please keep in mind though that if you're dealing with some names that are not very common in Russia and those names don't have any clear gender endings, then you would not apply any ending to them at all. Even if you're technically putting them in the genitive case, you would just not change the ending. For example, let's take the name Matthew, right? And in Russian, Matthew is Matthew, but it does not have a clear masculine ending, right? Because the masculine ending generally in Russian is a consonant, right? So you would not technically apply any ending to this name, right? Even if you're using it in the genitive case. For example, if you want to say this is Matthew's car, you would literally just say "Эта машина Matthew." So don't try to apply any ending to a name that does not have a clear gender ending. Another example is Joshua, for example, right? This is Joshua's car. In Russian would be "Эта машина Joshua." That being said, if you shorten those names to Matt or Josh, then they would end in a consonant, and in that case you could apply the actual genitive case ending, right? For example, this is Matt's car would be "Эта машина Meta," or this is Josh's car, right? You would say "Эта машина Josha." The same goes for some common female names, for example, Jennifer or Megan, right? Those names that don't necessarily end in an A. So they don't, in other words, they don't end in a typical feminine ending. In that case, again, you just don't touch the ending, right? You just keep them the same. For example, this is Jennifer's car. You would literally just say "Эта машина Jennifer." Or this is Megan's car. "Эта машина Megan." The important thing to remember here is that the owner or the possessor of the object comes after the object, not before the object, as it is oftentimes the case in English. For example, if you're trying to say this is Michael's car, in Russian you would not say "Это Майкла машина," right? You would say "Это машина Майкла," because again, Майкла means of Michael. So literally you're kind of saying this is the car of Michael, except again, you don't say of literally because Майкла already means of Michael. So you're just saying this is Michael's car, again, "Это машина Майкла." Or if you're trying to say this is my sister's house, right? Don't try to say "Это сестры дом," right? You would literally say "Это дом сестры," which means this is a house of the sister or of one's sister. So let's have some practice. I will tell you a few phrases in English and you will need to translate them into Russian and use the genitive case. Feel free to pause the video after each question if you need a few more seconds to think, but for each question I will be telling you the answer in just a few seconds. Also, for right now, I will be avoiding the possessive pronouns in my examples. I know in English it's very common to say this is my brother's car, for example, right? You wouldn't really say this is the brother's car or this is brother's car, right? But in Russian, it's not uncommon to actually say it like that. And for the simplicity of these examples, again, I will be avoiding those possessive pronouns because technically you would have to put them in the genitive case as well. And we haven't really learned how to do that yet. So yeah, no possessive pronouns for now. First example, how would you say brother's car? So the word for car is машина. The word for brother is brat, right? So how would you say brother's car, or literally car of brother? Brother's car in Russian would be машина брата, right? literally car of brother, right? Brata literally means of brother. How would you say Anna's house, right? So the word for house is dom. The word for Anna is Anna. So how would you say Anna's house? Anna's house would be dom Anny, right? Dom, house, Anny, of Anna, right? So the genitive form of Anna is Anny. How would you say sister's dog, right? So dog is собака, sister is сестра. So how would you say sister's dog? Sister's dog would of course be собака сестры, which literally means dog of sister, right? So сестры literally means of sister. How would you say friend's phone, right? So the word for phone is телефон. The word for friend is друг. So how would you say friend's phone? And that of course would be телефон друга, right? Phone of friend. How would you say Alexander's book, right? So the word for book is книга. And Alexander, the male name, is Alexander. So how would you say Alexander's book? Alexander's book would be книга Alexandra, right? Alexander is a masculine noun, you apply a to it. So книга, the book, Alexandra, of Alexander. How would you say Megan's cat, right? So the word for cat is кошка, well, female cat. And the name Megan in Russian is the same, Megan, right? So how would you say Megan's cat? Megan's cat would be кошка Megan, right? The literally cat of Megan. And again, the name Megan does not have a clear feminine ending, so you do not change it, you don't apply any ending, even though technically it's in the genitive case in this example, but there's no change. And just a couple of examples with inanimate nouns, right? For example, if you're trying to say roof of the house, right? So the word for roof in Russian is крыша, and the word for house, of course, is дом. So how would you say roof of the house? And of course, you follow the rules, right? So the roof is крыша, and then of the house, so you put the word house in the genitive case. It is masculine, so it becomes дома, right? Крыша дома, the roof of the house, literally. And one more example. How would you say door of the car, right? So the word for door in Russian is дверь, and the word for car is, of course, машина. So how would you say door of the car? And again, you follow the rule, so door does not change, and it's дверь. And then машина, feminine, becomes машины in the genitive case. So literally door of car or of the car becomes дверь машины. And in this video, I told you that the most general, the most fundamental meaning of the genitive case is possession. But one other hint I can give you is always think of the genitive case as something that has to do with of, right? And of course, the preposition of does express possession, so it kind of makes sense. But you will see with other uses of genitive that most of the time it has something to do with of. So whenever in English you would be saying something that involves of or implies of, right? A lot of times you would actually use genitive in Russian, for example, with measures, right? Or other uses. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful. If so, be sure to hit the like button. Remember, you can also ask us any questions in the comment section below. Thank you all very much for watching. Remember to subscribe to our channel, and of course subscribe to our app, Russian Readers, where you will find a lot of helpful stories, including those that will help you practice grammar and cases in the Russian language. And well, I will see you in our next video. Until then, пока-пока.